you're building technology in very intense ways for others to use to build more technology. That's kind of how I think of the developer ecosystem. So I thought I'll just walk you through 6 imperatives that I think are very important for all of us. The first one is the cloud. We're still in the early innings of the cloud. Because here's the thing. If you take this one stat around how many apps are really, really cloud native, it's still a very low number. And cloud native is what? 10x, maybe 50x better in terms of just sheer throughput based on whatever you did in the previous generation to what you could do being cloud native, right? Being event driven, being functions. All of these things are going to completely transform the footprint of your application. And not to mention, by the way, the efficiency, right? Moving to the cloud is the best way to hedge against energy prices. In fact, the fact that it's what, 90%, 80% and more efficient, this is the best way to help even with energy transition. Demand, right? Because one of the things is if demand is uncertain, the best way to hedge is to sort of be much more on the cloud so that you are hedged on demand. So I think the cloud is in very early on. Don't bet against the cloud is the basic mantra, which is just go ride the cloud economic wave in terms of your applications. Now, we're obviously expanding. We have 60 plus regions, 200 plus data centers in India. We have 3 regions. We have a 4th region coming up. So we are definitely investing our capital to build all the compute infrastructure so that you benefit from having compute infrastructure that's world-class for you to build your applications. Now, the cloud is just not going to remain in data centers. The cloud is going to distribute itself. Distributed computing will always remain distributed. And Azure Arc for us has been actually a pretty major breakthrough, even in the last couple of years. It's helped us take and embed compute in a factory, in warehouses, in retail outfits, because the world, especially with 5G and what comes after with low latency access to the edge, you will have a distributed computing fabric that spreads across. And so we're building out the software stack and the hardware stack so that we can embed computing in the real world. And we have significant momentum right here in India. When I look at it, like whether it's the conglomerates of the Tatas, the Adanis, the Jios, and everything that they're doing, it's sort of complete night and day from a few years to where they are in terms of their cloud intensity. Whether it's the startups that are all here today, right? All using and really scaling and building world-class infrastructure. And of course, our global SI partners who are not only using it to build their own infrastructure, but again, scaling it for everyone in the world. So there's just tremendous amount of momentum when it comes to the cloud. Now, let's move to the next area. The thing that everybody is buzzing about is AI. And, here's one fascinating stat. Today, when you think about AI, data that's generated through generative models, it's pretty much nothing. It's less than 1%. But it's expected to grow to, large double-digit numbers pretty soon. And you see it. Right? So I said, let's have some fun with these generative models. So I went and asked Dolly to dream of the future of Bengaluru. It came up with some pretty nice pictures. I think, look at that, huh? That's where I want to live. It's beautiful. So I said, okay, let's take the other generative model that people talk about. Let's ask it about the future of Bangalore. So we went to ChatGPT and said, give us, what do you think is the future of Bangalore? It had a lot of nice things to say about all of you folks, let me tell you. You're all brilliant, you're all great, except you got to solve the traffic problem. But it is beautiful. Like it sort of at least has a lot of optimism for what's going to happen. So then I said, okay, let's really ask it the question. What about the South Indian tiffins? How would you rank order them? So it came back with all of these things that I wish I could have for breakfast every day. And then I said, for some reason it thinks biryani is a tiffin. But the last time I checked, it was not. But, I love biryani too, so I kind of gave it the prompt. I don't think so. And then it apologized to me very politely and said, as a Hyderabadi, you can't insult me by saying, biryani is a tiffin. and then so I said, okay, why don't you write a play where the idli argues against the dosa as to who is the better tiffin in the world? And it did it. And then I said, why don't we make it a Shakespearean play? And it went on and brought out the best of Shakespeare in South Indian tiffin genre. So, I mean, it's all fun. It's just fascinating to see how these generative models are capturing the imagination, right? So the question is, what is all this? To me, what it is it's a reasoning engine that I think we can use as frontline workers, as knowledge workers, as any professional doing any design task, any creation task, to truly have this be a co-pilot that helps us do whatever task we are setting out to do more creatively, more productively, bring out more ingenuity, break down some of the barriers, the learning curves for every one of us. So I think it's a golden age. It depends. There will definitely be unintended consequences that we will have to guard against. So AI ethics, AI safety, alignment with human preferences, these are huge topics. Displacement is going to be a huge topic. But we have to take those all as first-class considerations. What is possible, what are the unintended consequences, and work on them as a developer community, as a community of digital enthusiasts who then really make sure that the ultimate benefits of this can be realized. By the way, the first thing, though, we also have to really get our act together in terms of how we manage the data infrastructure. In a world where all this data is getting generated, one of the things that's going to be very needed is, do we have the robust scale data infrastructure for all this variety, all this volume, all this velocity? And the good news is we've been at it, right? Just like the cloud has helped us create the AI, even the data platforms are in a state where we can deal with this, and of course it has to evolve. At Microsoft, we're building out all of this infrastructure for all the operational stores, the connecting those, whether it's sort of Cosmos DB, which is a regionless scale database, or SQL, or then to be able to directly using Synapse Link connected to the analytics, right? There's a real-time connection between what is operational and analytics. And then have governance, because after all, data provenance is going to be a massive thing, right? Which is, where was I trained? How was this model trained? What is happening in terms of information leakage or not? These are all going to be very, very important considerations for everyone. So really thinking about the data fabric that is truly coming together in support of large-scale AI training and large-scale AI inference, both of those, is, I think, going to be one of the big considerations. So we are building that. The second thing that also we need to build, as I said, in order to have these large models, you need world-class AI infrastructure. And whether it's on training or an inference. And this is where we at Microsoft with Azure have gotten ahead. And it's thanks to sort of the partnership with OpenAI and the feedback loop there and what we have built. And you can, so do your own benchmarks today in terms of large-scale training and large-scale inferencing. We have the best infrastructure. And the uniqueness there is, in fact, building out not just having the right silicon. Of course, that's where we partnered deeply with NVIDIA, but also to be able to think about the full system architecture, right? The networking. The first time I saw Hadoop is when I said, wow, these data parallel workloads are so different. This was late, I think maybe 2007, maybe. And then when I look at these large training jobs, they're so different. They're synchronous, the way they cohere, their power draw, it's just a completely different ball of wax, and you have to think about the technology behind it in pretty unique ways. We're taking all of the output of all these large models, making them available as cognitive services, Azure OpenAI API. OpenAI themselves have APIs, that's on Azure. So we're going to democratize access to these large models so that you all can go on to build on top of it. And even in this trip in India, it's fantastic to see the use cases, right? I had a chance to meet the folks over at Seeds, which is a non-profit, which is taking all high-def satellite imagery and creating essentially micro-forecasts for disaster relief, right? So their volunteers can go to a neighborhood and say, here's what may happen during a flood, and help them evacuate to the right spot. So it's just great sort of use case of using AI, in fact, to help people, especially at a vulnerable time. The other thing that was truly, for me, perhaps my most mic drop moment on this trip was what I saw with Bhashini, which is the program of the National Language Translation Mission. So, obviously we are working with them along with all the other mentors of this program to enable essentially a digital public good around language translation so that everybody in India has the ability to tap into great AI models that essentially, whether it's speech-to-speech, speech-to-text, text-to-speech, across all languages is possible, right? So that's, first of all, we can go on and talk about what's happening in India with digital public goods. It's phenomenal. It's just unbelievable for me to see the India stack mature and go, the use cases between the technology and the policies. There's nothing like that I see anywhere else in the world, and it's fantastic for India to lead and then contribute this back to the world even. And to me, the thing that I saw was, I did the demo in Hindi, where the gentleman asked about a particular government program in Hindi. It came back with a response, and in the response it said, go to the portal. And the person says, no, I don't want to go to the portal. Can you do this for me and figure out some other suvidha? And he did it. And that is, it's just automated it. So here's somebody speaking in any Indian language, expressing a complex thought, and saying, I want to navigate all of these programs, and I want to get this done. The bot comes back and sort of suggests what they should do. It says, no, that's not what I want you to even get this done for me. It's like having a co-pilot, a personal assistant, an agent that is provisioned for you to get stuff done. That last mile, they took GPT, trained it on all of the data, that is government data, and essentially used the front-end language translation with the understanding of all of that data. Think about what I just described. Here is someone in India, in a rural part perhaps, speaking in their language, and essentially creating a session in which what was developed maybe 2 months ago, a month ago, as a large model somewhere else in the world, and both of those got connected. And when I saw that, I said, God, this is a changed world where the diffusion of the latest and greatest technology and its ability to make it really impactful for someone's life in a rural part of India, that's the world that I always said I dreamt of being in, and I think we're there. And it's up to us now to be able to take this and amplify it. So it's a fantastic thing to all of you for doing it. And in fact, it doesn't end. My amazement doesn't end. So in fact, the other team I met recently was a set of high school kids from the National Public School at Koramangala. In fact, I met them in Delhi yesterday. And they built this cool thing called the Bloom Box. What it does is it basically has a camera, it has speakers, it essentially does sign language translation. For anybody who has hard of hearing, can in fact be able to sort of sign language, both translation and have economic opportunity. They showed even a retail scenario in which the person who was at the vending shop had the impairment, and they were able to still be employed. And so it's just fantastic to see how some of this AI is making its way into technology that is having a real social impact. Speaking of that, ultimately, the thing we care about, right? The first product at Microsoft was a developer product. It was the basic interpreter for the Altair. A lot has happened since 1975 to now. But at the core, I think we are a company that gets up every morning to build better